Welcome to I Feel Fat Today. I'm your host, Kelly Taylor, back again, another week, another episode. Oh, I've had a few episodes this week, personally speaking. I can say definitively, personally, for no reason outside of my own brain, have I not had a good week. I've had a definitively bad week. But more on that. Let me get through the housekeeping. As always, thank you so much for joining me. Please go over to YouTube where we have full video episodes. Go over there and subscribe. Even if you subscribe and you never open up the YouTube app again, you never go to YouTube and you never watch the videos, just go over there and give me that subscription because it means more to me than you'll ever know. Unless, of course, you have a podcast in which subscribe for subscribe, sub for sub. That's what we would say on MySpace. I remember on MySpace I used to always post bulletins, but the subject line being like PC number 4 PC, and that's how I would flirt with boys. Okay, yeah, so go to YouTube and subscribe. We have full video episodes. I like watching podcasts. I have some podcasts that I only listen to on audio and some that I can only watch. So I don't know. Go look there. Like and comment on the videos. Give me that engagement. And after you do that, head over to Apple Podcasts, rate and review us over on Apple, and give us a 5-star review if you like the podcast. What you can also do if you don't like the podcast is that you can give a 5-star review, still give the 5 stars, but then just like write hate speech directed to me in the comment. And so that way you can get me excited with the 5 stars and then completely just devastate me with your mean comments. That way we both win. And the algorithm is happy. Send us an email at ifeelfattoday@gmail.com. If you want to give me some feedback, you want some advice, you want me to cover a topic, you just want to say, hey, reach out to me there. And then, of course, follow us on social media on Instagram at ifeelfattoday. And you can follow me, Kelly Taylor, at hello, this is Kelly. All right. Oh, what do we got going on? Before I get into anything, how about last week's episode? Now, I have enjoyed every guest that I have had on the podcast, and I am excited about the episodes that we have coming up. I really think that the people that I get on the podcast to be interviewed, not that I know that they're great, funny people, but sometimes I'm just truly shocked. And boy, Lauren Petrie, did she shock me. I knew she had a crazy life. I knew she was really cool. I was really interested in like hearing about the morgue stuff and, you know, going in about talking about aliens and true crime and all that fun stuff. But just on a very personal level, whoa, what a life has she led. And if you haven't checked out that episode, definitely go back and check it out. I recommend checking out all the episodes, but Lauren's especially, we went for over 2 hours. I could have kept going. Part of me wanted to release the episodes like a part 1 and a part 2, but I thought, no, I'll give it all in one go so you can have that. And yeah, I hope to have even more interesting guests like her on, which I will. I have a great roster lined up. But due to some scheduling conflicts and me having a part-time job as a dog sitter, my house is currently overrun with dogs. Well, that sounds crazy. It's not overrun with dogs. I just am watching a dog here that I didn't expect to be watching. So I had to reschedule my guest for this week to next week. So there's no guest this episode. You're just kind of stuck with me and my shitty attitude. But hopefully by the end of it, I will be in a better mood. Yeah, that's that. Okay, what do I have going on? Oh my God, what a week. What a week it has been. Look, I've been through a lot of therapy. I continue to go through therapy. I think therapy has literally saved my life, not to be dramatic, but like it really has been this tool that I've used, and it wasn't until the past few years where I really started tackling, in therapy stuff with my weight and my body and how I feel about all of that. And it's been a process, and it's been a journey. And I remember a few years ago, let's call it 2 years ago, maybe more, I'm a little bit longer than that. I remember being in therapy, hearing what my therapist was saying about, like, you're only going to be able to get on the other side of your eating disorders and your negative self-talk and all of that shit if you get on the side of just liking your body. And I thought, well, then I'm never going to get on the other side of it, because I will always hate this vessel. I will always hate it. I will never be okay with being a fat person. I have a hard time identifying with it. Like, I'm never going to get on the other side of it. And then, you do the work, and then something started to click, and I was like, okay, no, I mean, I think that this could work. Like, I could get, to a place where I am thinking less about my body, and I am more present and taking in the moment, and I am less physically repulsed by photos and videos of myself, which, unfortunately, as someone that, podcasts and goes on stage for what I want to be my living, as a way I make my living, it's sort of like exposure therapy. You see it constantly, and, it's not like I put myself in this position to have to confront the way that I look, because I need to for this job. And I really have started getting to a point where it's like, it didn't feel fake for me to be like, happy with the way that I look or fine with my body. And, so I've done a lot of work on that side of things, not to mention the work of, like, binge eating and purging and all that stuff. Like, all of that, like, real fucked up shit that, I didn't think anybody else dealt with. I started getting to a point where I realized, oh no, like, everybody deals with this. Anyways, I'm kind of rambling. I know the reason why I've had such a huge sort of regress, a huge sort of taken many steps back, and, healing is not a linear process. It's an entire journey. And each setback, tees you up for you going further. But this is so embarrassing. I'm so ashamed of this. Over the weekend, I was hanging out with my friends at some of us had an Airbnb, and some of us had just like a friend's house. I didn't really know the people staying at the friend's house. I definitely didn't know the people that owned the house. They weren't around. Whatever. We're having fun. We're in the pool, and everything's great. I'm getting out of the pool, and I'm using the ladder. And as I'm using the ladder to get out of the pool, I have the thought, why am I using this? Why don't I just, this is like the short end of the pool. It's like the shallow end. Like, I can just sit on the side and get out. But no, I use the ladder, just not thinking. And the top step of the ladder broke, which, if you're a person in a body, but especially a bigger body, it's just the most demoralizing thing to happen. Like, a chair breaks, or you have trouble getting into a booth, or you can't shimmy past something. And this is not something I'm confronted with daily. In the scale of fatness, I am nowhere near how bad I guess it could be. And I think that's also what I have to tell myself. So I literally do not go crazy, we'll call it, for the algorithm's sake. But anyways, so that happened. And look, It was an old pool, an old house, an old ladder. You can see, I saw very quickly how on like the side of the step, it's like rusted out. So it just was old and it broke. And also, like, what's the big, it's a pool ladder. Like, how much could those be? What is that, $100 to replace? I don't know. I don't own a pool. Anyway, so that happens. Immediately, I'm fucking embarrassed. Like, it's not like it was like a skeptical. It's not like a spectacle. It's not like it broke and everyone was like pointing and staring and laughing. It wasn't anything like that, but it was something that happened that I was like, fuck, this isn't my house. These aren't my people. I don't know what do I fucking do? It's like clogging the toilet at your friend's house or any, like, it's like, fuck, there's no plunger. What do I do? So I go over to the table of like where people were kind of hanging out, and like it had started to rain, so people were kind of like in and out. That's what it was. I was getting out of the pool because it started to rain. So I go over to the table, and I guess he was joking, but this one guy was saying how like it's his house or he knows the people that like own the house, and I was like, oh, dude, I fucking broke the top step of the ladder while I was getting out, and I just like needed to like tell somebody and get it out and like try to keep it under wraps because I was fucking embarrassed. And so he was like, oh, I don't really own the house. I and I'm like, oh fuck, okay, you don't own the house. He's like, yeah, no, but you can tell me and I'll tell whoever. So I thought it was fine, and I was like, okay, yeah. I was getting out of the pool. The top step of the ladder like broke off, so now there's just like the 2 rungs instead of the 3 rungs. And he's like, okay, no worries, it's cool. And I was just like, okay, I'm just gonna sit, whatever. And so I thought, even though I'm sitting there in my shame, I thought it was fine, and I thought it could be something where it's like, okay, that happened, but I'm not gonna like, marinate on it. I'm not gonna sit there and feel, make myself feel bad, like whatever. And like, this, again, this is maybe me just trying to rationalize it, but it was an old ladder, so it could have been anybody, like not like a light person, but like a muscular person that's like, dense. Maybe they would have, could have broken it getting out, and whatever. It was me. And there is a lot of me, so, Later on that night, I'm back at the B&B with like my people, because I was sort of like an outside friend coming into this. And all of a sudden, a group that I'm not in, because again, I don't know these people, starts popping off with someone being mad about the pool ladder being broken. And they're like, it's so fucking disrespectful. And, it's just crazy that you would break the ladder and then just fucking leave. Like, who did this? And my stomach fell into my ass. And I took my friend's phone who was in the group, and I started messaging being like, this is Kelly. I did that. I'm sorry. I'm so embarrassed. Like, I would never break something like that and just leave. I thought I told somebody about it. Like, and then no one's messaging back in the group. No one's saying anything. So I give the phone back to my friend, and I was just like, let me know if they say anything, whatever. And, the girl that was upset, I get her boyfriend's number because no one had her number. So I'm like messaging him, trying to like be like, hey, this happened. I'm so sorry. I'm trying to find the girl on Instagram, but I didn't have service, so I couldn't pull her Instagram up. Everything ended up being fine. I ended up messaging the girl the next day on Instagram being like, I am so fucking embarrassed, and I am so I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that you were upset, and just know, like, I would never just break something like that and then leave. Like, and I had to say, like, it was demoralizing for me for this to happen. And so I kind of just wanted to tell somebody, and I thought I told the person that I should have told, and it was fine. And so had I known I should have gone to you, I would have just done that. She was like, I'm sorry. I freaked out. It's fine. Now she's apologizing to me. Now I feel bad that I put her in a position where she feels bad. So we get through that. And just ever since then, I have not been able to give myself a break. Like, oh God, this happened. This happened a few days ago. And I haven't been able to just let it go. So I've been a little bit of a shut-in this week, and I've just been kind of focusing on work. And I was texting my one friend, she made the poor choice to, text me to say, hey. And of course I started dumping all of this on her because I was, on the train back from the trip. And so I was just sitting in my, shame. And, I was telling her about what happened and how I just feel fucking gross. And what has come up for me, I think the overarching thing that really has been upsetting me, and I'm trying to say this without I sound like the woman that put out her apology video for freaking out on the plane. She's like, I'm trying not to sound like Mickey Mouse as I'm crying. And I'm like, that sounds like me right now. I'm trying not to, I'm so dramatic. I'm so fucking dramatic. 1 second. What is coming up for me is that my entire life, I have hated my body. My entire life. I remember being like 5 and the concept of dieting being introduced to me and learning for the first time that people thought I was fat, and it was something that I needed to make sure I kept in check, and that I was going to be going on a diet when I was like as young as 5. And from that point on, I just hated myself, my body. I always thought about what I ate, and it was reinforced. Because even if I had a moment of forgetting, there was always an adult in my life there to remind me of like, don't eat that fast, or did you write down what you were eating? Are you keeping your food journal? So it's just, even when I wasn't fat, I was made to feel like I was, and that like I needed to hate myself for being that way. And I was a disappointment if I wasn't thin. And I needed to stay thin. And I was always on the pursuit of thinness when I was already thin. So I've had this completely dysmorphic view of myself from elementary school into middle school, into high school, into college. I always thought I was way bigger than what I was. I always thought I was as big as a house. But now, I'm 30, and I look how my dysmorphic self thought I looked. And that's what I'm struggling with the most, because it's no longer a dysmorphia. It just is. And I'm trying with this podcast to dismantle that with this insatiable urge to be thin. Because, people look at the color of your skin. I'm using this as an example. You can't change the color of your skin, is what it is. You can change your hair color. You can even get contacts and change your eye color. You are what you are. But your weight is always this thing where it's like, but you can change that. Which, of course, that is true to a degree. Because you don't know economically where people are. You don't know mental health-wise where people are. I remember when I was so depressed and I wasn't in therapy and I wasn't on medication, which I'm not on now, but before when I wasn't and I needed to be, I remember thinking, if one more person tells me to get up and do fucking yoga to feel better, I'm gonna literally lose my mind. Like, I'm going to go fucking postal. And these dogs. And because I just was not in a place where I could be doing fucking yoga to get out of this depression. And so I'm not saying I can't work out. I'm not saying that I can't eat right. That's not what I'm saying. But I am saying that circumstantially, you don't know what people are going through. You know, in theory, yes, if you have a body that you don't like and you want it to look different, you can change it. Because there are certain hard things that like you absolutely can't change no matter what. Like it is what it is. But we have to acknowledge the fact that like if your genes are fat, you're predisposed to being fat. Like if you're like, you know, where your lineage is from will impact your body shape. Like, and I hate saying that because it just sounds like an excuse. And just the way I've been feeling this week with what happened and just how like depressed and upset I've been over it, it's just made me really angry at fat acceptance, because how can I accept myself when I feel mentally so bad? Physically, I feel fine. I can move around. I, maybe can't, run a mile as fast as I would like or used to be able to, but I physically feel fine. I'm an able-bodied person. But the way I feel mentally, because, I got home from that trip just reeling, feeling bad. And what did I do? I fucking binged. And you can look at that and you could say, like, well, that's your lack of self-control, and that's you not giving a fuck, and that's you just giving up. But I was just in a place where that was the only thing I could do. And that's what I did, and it's just this cycle. Like, I don't know if I'll ever be free from binge eating, and I don't even know if I even want to be, because what do I do if I don't have that? And the other thing that really bothers me, and this is not a knock on the people in my life, this is not a knock on my friends, it's just really frustrating that here we are in the year of our Lord 2023, and when you're upset about the way that you look, your friends say to you, why don't you go on Ozempic? And it's just like, I am an early adopter of weight loss medications, okay? If there's been a weight loss medication, I've done it. Hydroxycut, done it. I've done medications that isn't even in the cultural zeitgeist of what we talk about for medications, okay? I've done it all. I've gone to the doctors. I've gotten prescribed. I've done it. And I am done being beholden to these things. Again, it's not anyone's fault. People are just trying to help, especially when you're really upset, because I was saying horrible things about myself. Like, I don't deserve to be here. I hate myself. I'm useless. I'm worthless. I'm ugly. I'm gross. So what do I expect my friends to say to me? They just want to have a solution for me feeling like this. But that also sucks. That really fucking sucks. And then that makes me just want to retreat more and not want to talk to people. So that's why I've been having a bad time recently. And I am just in this place of being kind of embarrassed by the podcast, because I don't want being fat to be my thing. I don't know how I'm going to look in the future, for better or for worse. I don't know. And I wonder what I'm setting myself up for in terms of like, being ridiculed or whatever. I don't know. So that's what I have going on. That's why I've been feeling bad. And, I'm going to try to not cut this from the pod. I'm going to keep it in the hopes that someone listening will just resonate with it a little bit and I'll feel less alone. God, Okay, I'm done. This is supposed to be a comedy podcast. I'm the worst comic ever. Ugh. Okay. Ugh. All right. I have two articles I want to talk about today, because this is a guest-free podcast. You're kind of stuck with me. If you have made it through all of that. I went on for 25 minutes of just nonsense. And I found these two, and I've been wanting to talk about them, and so I'm happy to talk about it now. I do want to say that by the time I talk about Lizzo, just like when I do this one-on-one intro, it's going to be old news. I'm hoping to next episode be able to have all of my thoughts together and give like my full like thoughts on what's happening with Lizzo, and do something a little bit more in depth. But for this week, what we're going to do is the first article I have is about food noise. Now, it's like that. What's so funny about TikTok and the internet in general is that there have been things that have been true my entire life that I've never been able or even thought to name or categorize. But people on TikTok do. And one of those terms has been food noise. I've only heard it in the last year or so. But once I heard what people were talking about with this food noise, I was like, oh, yeah. Thinking about food constantly. Yep, totally. So I found an article from the New York Times about Ozempic having an impact on food noise, and how it's essentially it's a good side effect of the drug, and how it's made it disappear. And clearly, I just cried about, people saying I should go on Ozempic, or, offering it to me as a solution, and how I didn't like that happened. And now I'm going to go into an article about a positive side effect of Ozempic. But here's the thing. I don't want to have a completely one-sided podcast. I think it was a few weeks ago, the last time I did a solo podcast, I talked about how these drugs like Ozempic are causing stomach paralysis. And so time to talk about the other side of it. That's a bad side effect that could be happening. And now here we are with the good side effect. And I more so wanted to go into this article because it talks about food noise, and it gives it a definition better than anything I really had found else on the internet that wasn't from like a, WebMD. And, I guess the New York Times can be reputable. So, okay. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I will link it. But yeah. Okay. We're going to go into it. So this is titled "People on Drugs Like Ozempic Say Their Food Noise Has Disappeared." This is by Danny Bloom, and it came out June 21st, 2023. Okay. Until she started taking the weight loss drug Wegovy, Stacey Clemmer's days revolved around food. When she woke up, she plotted out what she would eat. As soon as she had lunch, she thought about dinner. After leaving work as a high school teacher in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, she would drive to Taco Bell or McDonald's to quell what she called 24/7 chatter in the back of her mind. Even when she was full, she wanted to eat, which I'm going to interject here. I have been reading my intuitive eating book, and I have learned that I don't know definitively because I haven't made it through the book, but food noise and food chatter is just sort of like a signal that something else is going on, and instead of investigating what's going on, you're just thinking about food. Okay, back into the article. Almost immediately after Miss Clemmer's first dose of medication in February, she was hit with side effects. All bad. Acid reflux, constipation, queasiness, fatigue. But she said it was like a switch flipped in her brain. The quote-unquote food noise went silent. I don't think about tacos all the time anymore, Miss Clemmer, 57, said. I don't have cravings anymore at all. It was the weirdest thing. Dr. Andrew Kraftson, a clinical associate professor at Michigan Medicine, said over his 13 years as an obesity medicine specialist, people he treated would say they couldn't stop thinking about food. So when he started prescribing Wegovy and Ozempic, patients began to use the term food noise, saying it had disappeared. He knew exactly what they meant. As interest has intensified over Ozempic and other injectable diabetes medications like Mounjaro, which works in similar ways, that has gained traction. Videos related to the subject of food noise have have been viewed 1.8 billion times on TikTok. And some of the people who have managed to get their hands on these medications, despite persistent shortages and list prices that can near or surpass $1,000, have shared stories on social media about their experiences. When food noise fades, Wendy Grant, 56, said she first heard the term food noise on TikTok, where she had also learned about Mounjaro. It's crazy. People are learning about medications on TikTok. Like, that app, talk about global reach, man. Crazy. She found a telehealth platform and received a prescription within a few hours. She remembered the first day she started taking it last summer. It was like a sense of freedom from that loop of, what am I going to eat? I'm never full. There's not enough. What can I snack on? She said. It's like someone took an eraser to it. For some, the shortages of these medications have provided a test case, a way to see their lives with and without food noise. Kelsey Ryan, 35, an insurance broker in Chattanooga, New York, hasn't been able to fill her Ozempic prescription for the last few weeks, and the noise has crept back in. It's not just the pull of soft serve each day, she said. Food noise, to Miss Ryan, also means a range of other food-related thoughts, internal negotiations about whether to eat in front of other people, wondering if they'll judge her for eating fried chicken, or if ordering a salad makes it look like she's trying too hard. Ozempic is more of a way to silence the food noise than anything else, she said. It's a tool, she said. It's not like a magic drug that's giving people an easy way out. So, okay, everything that this person has described is disordered eating. Like, when you're thinking about, should I performatively eat in front of this person because it'll make me look better, that's just, something's not right in your brain. And I think if more people were, open to therapy, they maybe wouldn't need Ozempic to, cut the food noise chatter, because food noise has been a thing that has affected me my entire life, always thinking about the next meal. And it still exists in my life today, but it doesn't completely overtake my life. And I have to say, back when I've got a prescription of Saxenda from the back of a truck, basically. I never went to a doctor for it. I just kind of got it and was taking it. The food noise never went away for me. I didn't have that magical feeling of like, oh, I just don't think about food. Because even when I was full, I was still thinking about food. And I only did, whatever. Oh, shut up. Okay, what causes food noise? There's no clinical definition for food noise, but the experts and patients interviewed for this article generally agree it was shorthand for constant rumination about food. Some researchers associate the concept with hedonic hunger, an intense preoccupation with eating food for the purpose of pleasure, and noted it could also be a component of binge eating disorder, which is common but often misunderstood. Yeah, we're all just fucking binging because we're all trying to exist in a capitalist society and we're all dying because of it. Obesity medicine specialists have tried to better understand why a person may ruminate about food for some time, said Dr. Robert Gabby, Chief Scientific and Medical Officer of the American Diabetes Association. It just seems to be that some people are a little more wired this way, he said. Obsessive rumination about food is most likely a result of genetic factors, as well as environmental exposure and learned habits, says Dr. Janice Jin Huang, Chief of the Division of Endocrinology and Metabolism at the University of North Carolina. Some people can shake off the impulse to eat, and other people stay mired in thoughts about food. Is the $1,000,000 question, says Dr. Wang. And that's interesting. The idea that some people have this impulse and other people can shake the impulse, and that's just what it is. And someone on TikTok said, again, TikTok. Oh, I should be so embarrassed. Whatever. I'm just like everybody else. Someone posted a video like, if you're wondering why Bethany Frankel can be as skinny as Bethany Frankel is, it's because she doesn't have food noise. She doesn't think about food constantly, and she's not constantly eating. We don't know if that's true. She could be obsessed with food. Like, we don't know what her deal is. But the concept of, like, it kind of was a little bit of a light bulb moment for me, because I was like, oh, the concept of someone being especially thin, maybe they don't think about food all the time. Maybe this is just not something that they deal with. Maybe their compulsions and obsession is pointed elsewhere. Okay. The article goes into how the medication suppresses the food noise. And I've gone over what Ozempic and Wegovy is. We know it's semaglutide, and how it affects the appetite. There are a few things that go into, why the drug keeps you, feeling fuller faster and for longer. Kind of goes into, like, the stomach emptying, taking a long time. Like, there are factors as to why semaglutide works in the way that it does. This is saying that theoretically, for why Ozempic may quash food noise, semaglutide activates receptors for a hormone called GLP-1. And studies in animals have shown that these receptors are found in cells in regions of the brain that are particularly important for motivation and reward, pointing to one potential way semaglutide can influence cravings and desires. And so they're saying that is not a proven, but it's a theory reason why this could be cutting off the food noise, because it's literally shutting off that noise in your brain because of what it is and how it, attacks the cravings in your brain. So yeah, I'll put that in the show notes so you can check it out and read it if you want for more info. I mean, I kind of read the whole thing, but you can check it out for yourself, especially if you can't stand the sound of my voice like myself. What do we think about that, kids? Okay. The second article I wanted to read is very pertinent to this episode because of, the mental breakdown you saw me have in the first 20 minutes of the show. And why I feel so frustrated with being fat, with how I've always felt about my body compared to how I look now, and just how I feel like this can be really limiting for myself, how I'm trying to exist somewhere in the happy medium of fat acceptance, but also wanting to look smaller. It's complicated. And I found this article from The Economist titled The Economics of Thinness. And I thought it was super interesting, so I want to read it here and chat about it a little bit. And again, I'm going to link it, but this is from The Economist, and it came out December 20th of 2022. So still pretty new. Okay, the economics of thinness. Is it economically rational for ambitious women to try as hard as possible to be thin? Morel Guilin. Oh my God, this is so embarrassing. I read this article, I promise you. I guess in my head, if I can't read a word or a name, I just skip it in my head, and now I go to read it out loud, and I can't, but I got it. Morel Giuliano. God. It's been a really long day. It's been a long week. Morel Giuliano is a slim and successful woman. She was born in France and studied in Paris before working as an interpreter for the United Nations. She then worked in the champagne business and in 1984 joined Veuve Clicquot, that champagne, whose performance was at the time rather flat. She fizzed up the ranks and launched their American subsidiary. In 1991, she became its chief executive and ran it with great success. In her apartment overlooking downtown Manhattan, she offers a glass of water before quipping, "You know how much I love water." She is correct. Drinking plenty of water is a key rule in French Women Don't Get Fat, her best-selling book on how to lose weight and stay slim the French way. In the book, she describes her discomfort when, as a teenager, she gained weight while spending a summer in America. Her uneasiness comes to a head when she returned home to France, and her father, instead of rushing to hug her, tells her she looks like a, quote, like a sack of potatoes. She goes on a new diet plan, remembers her old French habits, lots of water, controlled proportions, moving regularly, and tips the scales back in her favor. As a successful woman who is willing to talk publicly about her appearance and her weight, Miss Giuliano, oh my God, why can't I get this? Miss Giuliano is rare. Of course, no one wants to talk about it, she says. It's much easier to pretend it comes naturally. Successive waves of feminism have told smart women they should have emancipated themselves from vanity, as they have from domestic servitude and an existence defined by procreation. God, I'm such a bad feminist. I can't emancipate myself from vanity. That's all I have. And I don't even have it. But as a woman greatly affected by a comment about her weight, she is not rare. Aubrey Gordon, the co-host of The Maintenance Phase, a podcast which unpicks the problems with modern weight loss and wellness, was told by a doctor that she was overweight, aged just 10. Roxane Gay, an American writer, describes the shock on her parents' faces when she returned home from her first term at boarding school, aged 13, weighing 30 pounds more than she did when she went away. These experiences are deeply personal, but also universal, at least in the rich world. They reflect the pressure on women to look like an ideal. That ideal has changed over time. Renaissance nudes boast ample curves, but in recent decades, it has been defined by thinness. In the 1980s in New York, it was the social X-ray, a term coined by Tom Wolfe in his novel Bonfire of the Vanities, to describe women so slight they existed only in two dimensions. This morphed into heroin chic ideal of London in the 1990s. I have a joke that I'm trying to work on where I was always obsessed with the heroin chic look. But for me, if I was going to achieve looking that thin, I would have to actually do heroin. Yeah, I need to write more. Today, the perfect body is the weasel bod, says one Los Angelinan who is surrounded by women seeking physical perfection. These women strive to look streamlined and sleek, like a weasel, as though they could slip through water without disturbing it. Pursuit of such a body might permit a little more food than the regimens of the past, but it's just as difficult to attain. I want to quickly go back a few paragraphs when they go through Aubrey Gordon and Roxane Gay's childhood definitive experiences of, being told, hey, you look different, then, you don't look as thin, and that's a bad thing. I literally touched on that at the beginning of this podcast, and how that kind of there's something about being young, like, I guess when you're young, you are just so wildly impressionable where, like, being told that one time when you're a teen will just, like, you'll mold your identity around that and strive to achieve something that may be outside of yourself. I have this memory of having a bedwetting problem up until, like, my preteens. It was, pretty bad and embarrassing. And I went to the doctor for it, and the doctor, the consensus is that I was having this bedwetting problem because there was too much weight being put on my bladder, which I can't imagine that being told to a person now. I like the idea that I was told that I was so fat that I wasn't waking up in the middle of the night when I had to pee, that I was pissing the bed because of it. Talk about damage. Like, how did my mom allow that? Like, that is fucking insane. Anyways, it's a cool little deeply personal story I just, put on YouTube. Anyways, moving forward. Okay. So they're talking about the different ideal bodies types and how today the perfect body is a weasel bod, which I have never heard of. And I'm trying to picture it. And like, I guess basically a weasel bod is like you can be mildly hippie, like a little bit more hippie than like, being two-dimensional, like a paper doll. Okay, all women eventually recognize the importance placed on their bodies. It's as though girls are walking through a forest unaware and are then shown the trees. They can wonder how the trees got there, how long they have been growing, and how deep their roots really go. But there is little they can do about them, and it is almost impossible to imagine the world any other way. I literally just said that before. And the fiction that clever and ambitious women who can measure their worth in the labor market on the basis of their intelligence or education need pay no attention to their figure is difficult to maintain upon examination of the evidence on how their weight interacts with their wages or income. The relationship differs in poor countries where rich people are generally heavier than poor ones. Wealthy people are thinner than poor ones in countries such as America, Britain, Germany, and rich Asian countries such as South Korea. There is typically a gently downward sloping relationship between most measures of weight, like body mass index or a measure of obesity, or the share of a population that is obese, and income, as measured by wages. The share of people below a poverty line or their income quartile. Oh my God. That poor people are more likely to be overweight has often been explained by arguments that obesity in the rich world is a feature of poverty. Poor people may struggle to afford healthy foods. They may reach for processed or fast foods because they lack the time to prepare meals at home, or have less time to exercise because low-wage jobs often involve working long shifts and can be less flexible than those performed by the quote-unquote laptop class, or because low income is often a function of limited education. Perhaps so goes the thinking the lack of education extends to a knowledge about how to maintain a healthy weight. The problem with all of these explanations is that the correlation between income and weight at the population level in advanced countries is driven almost entirely by women. In America and Italy, the relationship between income and weight or obesity is flat for men and downward sloping for women. In South Korea, the correlation is positive for men, but this is more than offset by the sharply negative correlation in women. In France, the relationship slopes gently downwards for men, but the slope is much steeper for women. These kinds of patterns seem to hold across much rich countries and appear robust to various ways weight or obesity might be measured. The Duchess Decree. In other words, rich women are much thinner than poor women, but rich men are about as fat as poor men. Wallace Simpson, whose marriage to King Edward the Eighth, it's Times New Roman. You think I know that like the back of my hand? Oh my God. King Edward VIII prompted his abdication, is supposed to have said that a woman can never be too rich or too thin. Preach. Apparently, she must be both or neither. This should give pause to anyone who thinks that poverty can explain why people are overweight or obese, or that being rich helps people maintain a lower weight. You must then explain why those dynamics seem only to affect women. Perhaps the relationship would look the same for both sexes, but the occupations that do that require or might result in slimness differ. Men disproportionately do lower paid physically active jobs like construction, although nurses spend as much time walking or standing as builders, and are disproportionately women. Some women, such as actresses, might be explicitly required to be thin to play certain roles. Still, it's hard to believe that either dynamic explains the entire difference. Data from the American Bureau of Labor Statistics suggests that just 3.5% of civilian workers do intensely physical jobs. And some of those categories, like exercise, instruction, and dancing, employ plenty of women. Only 0.1% of workers do jobs such as acting. That there is a gender gap in the relationship between income and weight, which cannot easily be explained by other differences between men and women, indicates another explanation. Perhaps being thin helps women become rich. Myriad studies found that overweight or obese women are paid less than their thinner peers, while there is a little difference in wages between obese men and men that are medically defined normal range. There are exceptions. One Swedish study found that obese men were paid less, but obese women were not. But research in America, Britain, Canada, and Denmark suggests that overweight women do have lower salaries. The penalty for an obese woman is significant, costing her about 10% of her income. So, putting a pin in this really quick, everyone makes fun of her, especially now. It's easy to make fun of Lizzo. But a show like Watch Out for the Big Girls or her employing fat backup dancers is progress for fat women. This article is saying that being an obese woman could have implications for your income because you're depending on the role, depending on the career, it could affect that. So I bring that up to say, the reason why I bring that up is to say that it's courageous to employ fat women the way Lizzo had. And I think that older women especially, are seen as disposable. Like once you hit to a 50-year-old woman in the workforce is much easily dismissed than a 25-year-old woman in the workforce. And so that's something to keep in mind when we talk about the economics of thinness. Okay. This might understate reality because it's hard to measure the wage gap for someone who is not offered employment because of their size. The upper estimates of the wage premium for women being thin are so significant that she might find it almost valuable to lose weight as she would gain in additional education. The wage premium for getting a master's degree is around 18%, only 1.8 times the premium a fat woman could, in theory, earn by losing around 65 pounds, roughly the amount that a moderately obese woman of average height would have to lose to be the medically defined quote unquote normal range. The penalty appears to be particularly significant for white women. Evidence for Black and Hispanic women are weaker, though that could be explained in part the fact that studies often use BMI, which can misclassify these women. Discrimination against fat women is not diminished as their numbers have risen. We might expect a declining penalty due to the increase in percentage of overweight individuals, wrote David Lampert, an economist, in a working paper for the BLS, because it has become more normal to be overweight. Instead, the stigma against overweight people has grown with their number. It almost doubled between 1980 and 2000. He suggests this may be because the increasing rarity of thinness has led to its increasing premium. Interesting. So because there are more fat people in the last 20 years, that is affecting the numbers here. And he's saying that because the increasing rarity of thinness has led to thinness being a premium. There are so many jokes that can be made right now. but I'm too mentally exhausted to make them. Also, I'm done being mean to myself for the night, maybe. The conclusion of the paper layers one infuriating sentence on top of another. As a larger woman ages, he writes, they incur the effects of years of cumulative wage discrimination, controlling for other factors. Their starting wages are lower. Throughout their working careers, these women receive fewer raises and promotions. His paper shows that, quote, an obese 43-year-old woman received a larger wage penalty in 2004 than she received at 20 in 1981, and also that, quote, an obese 20-year-old woman receives a larger wage penalty today than she would have in 1981 at age 20. This might reflect in part the higher cost that obese employees might impose on their employers, especially in America. Health insurance premiums in America are often paid by employers, and very overweight or obese people tend to incur higher costs, partly because they suffer more health problems as they age. Still, it is unclear why these costs could be passed to only women. The studies in Canada and Europe where government-funded health programs are the norm find similar sized wage penalties for women. So basically the problem is you're a woman. Meanwhile, the idea that the penalty for being obese might be rising, not falling, is backed up by the data from the quote-unquote implicit bias test run by Harvard University. It asked test takers to associate people of different races, sex, sexual orientation, or weight with words like good or bad. And in general, the findings are trending in a positive direction. Discrimination on the basis of race and sex have fallen over the last decade. Negative associations of gay people have fallen by a third. Weight is the only exception. Attitude towards heavy individuals have become substantially more negative. In this context, the argument often made for why women and girls feel such pressure to be thin and suffer from low self-esteem when they are not appear woefully incomplete. Perhaps women do feel bad about themselves because they compare themselves to the gazelles that populate the covers of magazines and are duped into thinking people are unedited and attainable. Maybe their parents or a doctor commented on their weight when they were young. But in addition to those pressures, it is the powerful incentive of the market. Women accurately perceive that failing to lose weight or to be thin will literally cost them. This is what I have been saying. And I feel like I've been sitting here like, oh, poor little fat girl. The study shows it is economically rational for everyone to devote time to education because it has clear returns in the labor market and for future wages, I guess. In the same way, it appears to be economically rational for women to pursue being thin. Obsessing over what and how much to eat and paying for fancy exercise classes are investments that will bear returns. For men, they are not. To some extent, women know this. A generation ago, they seemed to take it for granted. The most basic things to get on with after your job or during it is how you look and feel. It is unthinkable that a woman bent on having it all would want to be fat or even plump, wrote Helen Gurry Brown, the editor of Cosmopolitan magazine in the 1980s and 1990s in her book, Having It All, before rattling off advice on how to survive on an 800-calorie-a-day diet, encouraging women to weigh themselves daily and accept that dieting is hell and stop getting depressed about it. Such attitudes were more acceptable 4 decades ago, but the economic reality does not seem to have shifted much. All that has changed is the narrative, which has embraced body positivity and shunned dieting. Instead of the South Beach diet or Atkins women eliminate foods, becoming gluten-free, vegan, low sugar, under the guise of health or wellness to improve their gut health or raise energy levels. People spend large sums to attend Soul Cycle classes, a kind of boutique indoor cycling to be strong and fit, not to burn calories. Even glossy women's magazines now model skepticism towards top-down narratives about how we should look. but the psychological parasite of the ideal woman has evolved to survive in that ecosystem that pretends to resist her, says Gia Tolentino in her book Trick Mirror. Feminism has not eradicated the tyranny of the ideal woman, but has rather entrenched it and made it trickier. Bam. That paragraph is so good. That's why it's annoying seeing a fat model on a magazine. Okay? And I think that's the difference between Lizzo's fat backup dancers and a fat woman on Sports Illustrated. Okay? Because all of it, like when you, like, a fat model on a fashion magazine is just a trickier way into us thinking that we can get away with, diet culture and thin being the ideal, not being a thing. Because that fat model still has a flat stomach, okay? It's like a repackaged thin person with bigger hips. I'm not saying she's wrong. I'm not saying that's wrong. But I so resonate with this article, or that paragraph of this article. Even Girl Dinner. I love Girl Dinner. I think it's the cutest. I think it's such a cute thing for the girlies and whoever enjoys Girl Dinner. I love it. But, Girl Dinner now has just been repackaged into, okay, how can I make this plate look even more, anorexic than I'm really tired and I'm starting to sound crazy, but it's just like to say that you go to a Soul Cycle class because you want to be strong and not because you want to be thin. No, that's crazy. If it wasn't for being thin, you wouldn't do it. Being very obese comes with elevated health risks. Some might argue it is not a problem, that there are incentives for women to lose weight. But this relies on two wobbly pillars of logic. First, that people's weight is really is within their control. And second, that shame is an effective motivator. Some people have experienced the side effects of eating a little less and moving a little more has on their physical form, and it is so common to think that weight and obesity is a mutable trait, one that slim people work to achieve and fat people fail to achieve. If this were the case, then it might seem possible for women to opt out of discrimination on the basis of weight by conforming to the body type society demands of them. Yet the perception of total control is misguided. People often report gaining weight when they start taking antidepressants. Women tend to, if they suffer from conditions such as polycystic ovarian syndrome. Miss Gay describes how her weight gain occurred in the aftermath of a brutal sexual assault. It also raises the question of why a great slice of humanity collectively lost control of their eating habits in the 1980s when obesity rates began to soar in developed countries. Scientists are unsure of the answer. At some point to the rise of processed foods, but they do agree that it is almost impossible to lose weight and stay smaller. And some people achieve this, and the people who achieve this are far rarer than those who spend their lives trying, failing, and blaming themselves. Perhaps shame can work for some people on the margin. It forced Miss Giuliano, who asked why her father's reaction, when asked why her reaction to her father's comment was to decide to lose weight rather than to tell him off, she paused in a moment. But of course, she said, he was right. Too high a price. But think, too, of the huge chunk, of the huge cost that the stigma, shame, or the fear of becoming overweight has on all the women and girls who spend their lives worrying about what becoming that way might cost them. It's almost impossible to move around the world as a woman and not notice the time, energy, and investment women are making in logging the food they eat, reading diet books, and attending exercise classes. Everyone who has tried a juice cleanse or a cabbage soup diet will know that the pursuit of thinness can come at the expense of important things girls and women might want to do, like being able to focus on exams and enjoy and work or enjoy food. I literally have a joke where I'm like, I can't focus on anything when I'm on a diet. Like, who cares about me getting paid a fair wage? I need to know how many calories are in a splash of oat milk. It's 12 to Weight Watcher points. Again, I need to keep writing. According to some surveys, girls as young as 6 recognize the expectation that they should be thin. Then adolescents, overwhelmed by sudden expectations of beauty, transmit anorexia and bulimia to one another like a virus, writes Miss Tolentino. The tragedy is that there's no escape. Most women seem to try to conform. Some choose not to. Many simply fail. But whatever path is taken, it seems to come at a great cost. Bam! I loved that article. It is exactly what I have been saying this entire time. And that last paragraph, what comes to mind is Lauren Petrie, her episode last week, when she told the story of, she went to a dance, no one asked her to dance, so she came home and she had a sleeve of Oreos hiding in her room, and she's like in bed, sad, eating it. And her South African mother comes in and says, "Lauren, you're choosing a very difficult path by eating the Oreos." And yeah, she was right. Lauren's crazy mom was right. Yeah. I don't really know what to say. This is just what I've been saying. And I am still completely, wedged in the gears of trying to exist in this society. I want to be thin. I am at the point, at least this week, where I am like angry at body positivity and fat positivity. And it's all a projection of how I feel about myself. But damn, I don't even know what to say. And I hope that this wasn't just psychotic ramblings of a sad fat girl, but I hope it was even a little bit funny. I don't think this was. So shout out to you for sticking around. The metrics on this episode are going to be total ass. But yeah, thanks for sticking around. Thanks for listening to me. If any of you are out there. And yeah, that's really it. I'm trying to think if I have anything else pertinent to say about this. But I think this was a really good article. It's exactly how I've been feeling and what I believe to be true. And we'll see what we find out when we, talk to more people and their experiences with, being introduced to the idea that being fat is bad. And just know that no matter what endeavor you're going into, the impetus of whatever exercise class you're trying to do or mental health book you're trying to read or diet trend or plan that you're starting or wellness routine, whatever, just know that the motivation for that from the person that has created it is to make money off of you. And there's no escaping that. So, we're all just trying to exist, but always remember that you're just a pawn in the game of life. And the people that are controlling the pawns are the ones at top with all the money. And I want to be one of those people one day. So I can be like Taylor Swift and give people $100,000 bonuses. All right. Isn't it funny that, we pay people a living wage and are looked at as a hero? Crazy. Okay. That's all I got. I think that's all I need to say because it's really starting to go off the rails and I really got to go. But have a great week. We're going to be back with a guest next week. And yeah, that's what I got. Love you guys. Be well. Try not to kill yourself. I know it's tough. Bye.